Hi, my name is Josh. Welcome to my mini course on how to share the gospel intentionally. Today, I want to talk to you about how do you share your testimony and how does it fit in the context of a conversation with a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, or family member. And so first thing I want to say is I want to encourage you. In the last video, I asked you guys to make a list. Make a list of people you know who are really far from Jesus and people you know who might be interested, and start praying for them every day by name. And here's a couple things to pray. Pray, one, that they would be open to hearing the gospel. Pray, two, that God would be softening their hearts when they do hear the gospel, and pray for God to give you open doors when you pray for them, open doors and conversations with them to be able to share with them about Jesus. How do you share your testimony? What is your testimony? Well, there's two types of testimonies I want to talk about. First and foremost, I want to talk about the testimony of how you came to faith in Jesus. That is one of the most important testimonies you have. Now, you might be thinking, well, my testimony is not like super crazy. I never was homeless or was an alcoholic or whatever it is. Well, whether you have a crazy testimony or you have a normal testimony of growing up in the church, or you maybe didn't grow up in church, but one day you just realized you needed God and He found you type thing. Those are all important because God is going to bring people in your life that need to hear your story, and even your family and friends and coworkers. If your life doesn't completely match up with their current life, you still have a story that's going to impact them, and that's important. How do you share your story about how you met God? Well, the first part of it is you want to tell people what your life was like before Jesus. And then the second thing you want to tell them is how you met Jesus. This is the when, what, and where, and what actually physically happened and to you. Maybe it was just an amazing experience, or maybe it was just this realization that you needed to surrender your life to Jesus, and you did, and then you started walking with Him, and slowly your life transformed. But regardless of it, this is important to tell people. And then the third part is, what has your life been like since you've given your life to Jesus? And so those are the three components. Now, I want to say this: spend less time on the before Christ. If you have 3 minutes to share, you want to spend like 45 seconds on what your life was like before Christ. Now, you might be thinking, well, I got a lot to tell. Well, sum it up, because sometimes all people have is 3 minutes. And what's more important is not so much what you were like before Jesus, but how you met Him, and then what your life has been like since you've met Him. And so I would say, if you have a 3-minute testimony, 45 seconds is what your life was like before Jesus. About a minute was how you met Jesus. And the rest of the time is what your life is like now that you're walking with Jesus. Because the transformation, whether it was overnight change or it was slow, subtle over time, is important, because people need to know that God doesn't leave them where they're at when they give their life to Him, because it gives them hope, and it lets them know that if God did that for you, which is probably how I would normally end my testimony, God did this for me, and I believe He wants to do the same for you. And so that is the basic testimony of what God did in your life. Now, the other type of testimony I want to talk about is when you're talking to somebody and they're talking about having financial need. Well, if you have a story of you prayed for something or a time that God showed up for you financially, well, that's a testimony you want to share. You want to tell them, hey, this is a situation that I had. I didn't know what to do, so I prayed. And after I prayed, this is what God did and how He provided for me. And so it's the same kind of 3-step process, but in the same way you're showing this is where God showed up and this is how the provision came, or maybe it was healing or whatever it was. But when you share those type of testimonies, it also gives people hope that, hey, if you give your life to Jesus, if you trust Him, He's actually going to take care of you. And so those are the two main types of testimony. I'll wrap up here talking about, so how do you use these testimonies? When do you throw them out there? And so normally in general conversation with people, depending on what they're talking about, like if somebody's talking about just having a rough time with finances, then I would share a story, like I mentioned, about how God took care of us financially. If there's a moment where they're talking about, man, I don't know if God is real, then I share my testimony of how God became real to me. And that's my testimony of what I was like before I really was following Jesus. how I met him and how real he is to me today compared to when I first met him and what he's done in my life since I gave my life to him. And so those are kind of open doors. Ask questions when you're talking to your friends, neighbors, coworkers. Try to gauge where they're at. In fact, I'll do a short tutorial on here's a couple questions you can ask people just to kind of gauge where they are with the Lord, their understanding of Jesus. And it also helps you know when do you jump in. And it also opens the door to have a spiritual conversation, because I think that is one of the hardest things for us to transition to, from, hey, my favorite team, the Chiefs, they're winning. You start talking about Tyreek, or you start talking about, Patrick Mahomes, and how do you transition that to the gospel or something Jesus did in my life, And so those are some of the leading questions you can ask. But really spend time to listen to people when they share a need with you, pray for them, and then talk to them about what God has done in your life. And if you can start doing those things, you'll begin building relationships with your spheres of influence, and they'll see that God is real to you, that you really believe what you're saying, and you have stories to back it up. If you guys like these, please subscribe, like, and share. Bless you guys.